February 18, 1945, Eastern France. A Sherman tank erupts in flames for the third time beneath the same man. The odds of surviving one tank destruction are slim. 2 defies probability. 3 is statistically impossible. Yet Major Sydney Radley-Walters walks away from the burning wreckage, his crew intact, his war continuing. He has just become the most successful tank commander in the Western Allied forces, credited with 18 confirmed armored kills, including the destruction of Germany's most legendary Panzer ace. But unlike the enemy commander whose Tiger tank he obliterated 6 months earlier, Radley-Walters will never seek fame, never chase glory, never allow his name to become a weapon of propaganda. This is the story of how an infantry officer with 0 tank experience became the quiet, disciplined tactician who survived what no one should have survived, who killed what could not be killed, and whose name history nearly forgot. The Sherman tank was a death trap wrapped in American industrial optimism. Everyone knew it. The crews knew it. The commanders knew it. The Germans certainly knew it. Weighing 33 tons and armed with a 75mm gun that could barely penetrate German heavy armor at combat range, the Sherman faced Tigers and Panthers that outweighed it by 20 tons and could kill it from distances where the Sherman could not even fight back. The mathematics were brutal. A Tiger could destroy a Sherman at 2,000 yards. A Sherman needed to close within 500 yards to have any chance of penetrating a Tiger's frontal armor. 500 yards, close enough to see the faces of the men trying to kill you. The average lifespan of a Sherman crew in combat was measured in weeks, sometimes days. Tank crews did not speak about survival in terms of months or years. They spoke about missions, about sorties, about whether they would make it through the next engagement. The metal coffin you climbed into each morning might be your crematorium by evening. Fire was the greatest fear. Not the shell that killed you instantly, but the shell that ignited the ammunition stored inside the fighting compartment. The shell that turned your tank into a furnace while you scrambled for the hatches, your uniform melting into your skin, your lungs filling with smoke and burning gasoline. Sydney Radley-Walters understood these odds intimately. He had watched crews burn. He had pulled men from wrecks. He had seen what high-velocity armor-piercing rounds did to human bodies trapped inside steel boxes. And yet he climbed back into a Sherman again and again, leading from the front, refusing the safer assignments offered to officers of his rank, betting his life on tactics, discipline, and a philosophy of warfare that prioritized the survival of his men above the destruction of the enemy. He was not supposed to be a tank commander at all. Born in 1914 in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, Radley-Walters joined the Canadian Army as an infantry officer in 1940. He had never been inside a tank, had never studied armored warfare, had never fired a tank gun. When the Canadian Army decided to convert infantry units into armored regiments in 1942, Radley-Walters found himself assigned to the Sherbrooke Fusiliers Regiment, handed command of a Sherman tank and told to learn quickly. The training was rushed, improvised, inadequate. They practiced maneuvers in the Canadian countryside, fired at stationary targets, learned the mechanics of loading and aiming and coordinating movement. But nothing prepared them for what combat would actually feel like. Nothing prepared them for the disorientation of fighting while sealed inside a roaring, shaking, smoke-filled metal box where visibility was reduced to narrow slits and periscopes, where communication was nearly impossible over the engine noise and radio static, where every impact against the armor sent shockwaves through your skull, and every near miss showered the interior with fragments and sparks. June 6, 1944, D-Day. The Sherbrooke Fusiliers did not land on the beaches with the first wave, but they arrived in Normandy soon after, rolling off landing craft into a landscape transformed into hell. The hedgerows of Normandy were perfect defensive terrain for the Germans and perfect killing grounds for Allied armor. Each field was bordered by ancient earthen walls topped with dense vegetation, creating natural corridors where German anti-tank guns and Panzerfaust teams waited in ambush. A Sherman advancing down a Norman lane could be hit from 3 sides simultaneously with no room to maneuver, no space to retreat. The lead tank would be destroyed, blocking the road. The following tanks would be trapped, immobilized, picked apart one by one. Radley-Walters lost men in those first weeks. Good men, trained men. Men who did everything correctly and died anyway because the Sherman was outmatched and the terrain favored the defenders and luck ran out. He learned quickly that aggressive tactics got you killed. Heroic charges got you killed. Following doctrine got you killed. The textbook maneuvers taught in training assumed open ground, clear sightlines, predictable enemy positions. Normandy offered none of that. Normandy demanded adaptation or annihilation. So he adapted. He studied every engagement, every loss, every near miss. He interrogated survivors about what they had seen in the seconds before a tank was hit. He mapped German firing positions, identified patterns, began to understand the geometry of ambush and the timing of retreat. He realized that speed was survival. A moving target was harder to hit than a stationary one. A tank advancing at full speed, changing direction unpredictably, using terrain for cover, had a chance. A tank that stopped to aim carefully, that exposed itself to get a better shot, was already dead. He developed a tactical philosophy built on 3 principles: move fast, shoot first, never fight fair. If the Sherman could not win a direct confrontation with a Tiger, then avoid direct confrontations. Use speed to flank. Use terrain to ambush. Use coordination to overwhelm. And above all, preserve your crew. Dead men could not learn. Dead men could not improve. Every tank commander killed was knowledge lost, experience wasted. Radley-Walters began to obsess over crew fatigue, rest schedules, rotation patterns. Exhausted men made mistakes. Mistakes got you killed. He enforced rest periods even when other commanders pushed their crews without break. He pulled men out of combat rotation before they reached the breaking point. His superiors thought he was being soft. His crews knew he was keeping them alive. July 8, 1944. The ambush came without warning. Radley-Walters was commanding his Sherman, which he had named Caribou, advancing through a tree line south of Caen when the German anti-tank gun opened fire. The first round missed, screaming past the turret close enough to feel the shockwave. The second round punched through the frontal armor just below the gun mantlet, exactly where the armor was thinnest, exactly where every German gunner was trained to aim. The shell penetrated the fighting compartment and detonated among the stored ammunition. Caribou exploded. Radley-Walters and his crew evacuated through the hatches in the 3 seconds before the fire reached critical intensity. 3 seconds, the time it takes to draw 2 breaths, the difference between life and incineration. They rolled off the burning tank into the dirt, scrambled for cover as German machine gun fire raked the ground around them. Caribou burned behind them, ammunition cooking off in staccato bursts, the heat so intense they could feel it from 30 yards away. Radley-Walters had survived his first tank destruction. He requested another Sherman and returned to combat within 24 hours. The destruction of Caribou forced a tactical evolution. Radley-Walters realized that the Sherman's greatest weakness was not its thin armor or weak gun, but its predictability. German gunners knew exactly where to aim because every Sherman was identical. The 75mm gun was instantly recognizable. German tank commanders prioritized targets based on threat assessment, and standard Shermans were low priority compared to the new Firefly variant. The Firefly was a Sherman chassis, mounting a British 17-pounder anti-tank gun, the only Allied tank weapon capable of reliably penetrating German heavy armor at range. Fireflies were priority targets. German crews would ignore standard Shermans to kill the Firefly first. Radley-Walters began advocating for a deception strategy. Fireflies were painted to camouflage their long barrels. They were positioned to look like standard Shermans from a distance, and when contact was made, standard Shermans would engage first, drawing fire, forcing the German tanks to expose their positions while the Firefly waited for the perfect shot. It was sacrificial tactics disguised as coordination. The standard Shermans were bait. The Firefly was the trap. Radley-Walters commanded a standard Sherman, which meant he was the bait. He accepted this role without hesitation, because he understood that killing the enemy required risk, and risk required leadership, and leadership meant being willing to die. August 8, 1944, Operation Totalize. The Allied advanced south from Caen toward Falaise, designed to encircle and destroy German forces in Normandy. The Sherbrooke Fusiliers were assigned to capture and hold a defensive position near Chateau Gaumisnil, a medieval estate converted into a strongpoint. Radley-Walters positioned his tanks in a horseshoe formation covering the approaches from the north and east. The terrain was ideal for defense. Open fields providing clear sightlines, gentle slopes allowing hull-down positions, scattered tree lines offering concealment. If the Germans counterattacked, they would have to cross 600 yards of open ground under direct observation. The counterattack came in the early afternoon. German armor advancing from the northeast, moving fast, trying to break through before the Allies could consolidate their positions. Radley-Walters counted the silhouettes through his periscope. Panthers, at least 4, and something larger, heavier, moving with the confidence of a predator that had never met its equal, a Tiger. The Tiger tank was psychological warfare made metal, 60 tons of armor and firepower, mounting an 88mm gun derived from the legendary German anti-aircraft cannon. The Tiger could destroy any Allied tank in service. Its frontal armor was virtually impenetrable to standard Allied guns. It was slow, mechanically unreliable, expensive to produce, and tactically devastating. German crews assigned to Tigers knew they were driving invincibility. Allied crews facing Tigers knew they were already dead, unless they got very lucky or very smart. This Tiger was neither cautious nor slow. It advanced at the front of the German formation, turret traversing, searching for targets. Radley-Walters recognized the tactic immediately. The Tiger was confident. The commander was experienced. He was using the Tiger as a battering ram, trusting his armor to absorb punishment while he systematically destroyed the Allied position. It was a tactic that worked against inexperienced crews, against poorly coordinated defenses, against opponents who panicked when they saw a Tiger and broke formation or retreated or froze. Radley-Walters did not panic. He had prepared for this exact scenario. His Shermans were positioned in overlapping fields of fire. The Firefly was hidden hull down behind a slight rise, invisible to the advancing Germans. Standard Shermans were visible, provocative, tempting targets positioned to draw the Tiger into the kill zone. The geometry was perfect. The trap was set. Now he needed the Tiger to take the bait. He ordered his tank to fire first, not at the Tiger, which his 75mm gun could not hurt frontally, but at the Panthers supporting it. The shell hit a Panther in the track assembly, immobilizing it. The German formation reacted immediately. The Tiger's turret swung toward Radley-Walters' position. The 88mm gun elevated slightly, adjusted for range. Radley-Walters watched the barrel align with his tank and knew he had perhaps 2 seconds before the Tiger fired. 2 seconds to decide whether to stay in position, and trust his plan or reverse into cover and survive. He stayed, the Tiger fired. The round missed by less than a meter, impacting the ground to the left of Radley-Walters' Sherman and detonating in a fountain of earth and shrapnel. The concussion wave rocked the tank violently. Inside the fighting compartment, equipment broke loose, crew members were thrown against the turret walls, communications equipment sparked and died. Radley-Walters' ears rang from the overpressure, his vision blurred. But his tank was intact, and the Tiger had committed to the engagement, and the Firefly now had a clear side shot at less than 400 yards. The Firefly fired. The 17-pounder armor-piercing round crossed the distance in less than a second and struck the Tiger on the right side of the hull, just behind the drive sprocket, where the armor was thinner and the angle was favorable. The shell penetrated. What happened inside the Tiger in the next 3 seconds will never be known with certainty. Perhaps the round detonated ammunition. Perhaps it ignited fuel. Perhaps it killed the crew instantly, or perhaps they had time to understand they were dying. The Tiger lurched to a stop. Smoke poured from the hatches. Flames erupted from the engine compartment. The turret hatch flew open and a figure emerged, wreathed in smoke, collapsing across the turret roof. The remaining German tanks retreated. The Panthers reversed at maximum speed, laying smoke, abandoning the immobilized tank, abandoning the burning Tiger, abandoning whatever objective had justified the attack. Radley-Walters did not pursue. Pursuit meant leaving prepared positions, exposing his tanks to whatever German forces remained beyond the tree line. He held his ground and watched the Tiger burn and did not know that he had just killed Michael Wittmann. Michael Wittmann was Germany's most celebrated tank ace, credited with 138 tank kills and 132 anti-tank gun kills. He was a propaganda hero, a recipient of the Knight's Cross with oak leaves and swords, a symbol of German armored superiority. His destruction of 13 British tanks in 15 minutes during the Battle of Villers-Bocage had made him a legend. German newsreels featured his image. Hitler personally decorated him. He represented everything the Nazi war machine wanted the world to believe about German invincibility. And he had just died in an ambush executed by a Canadian tank commander who did not know his name, did not recognize his tank number, did not understand the significance of what had just happened. Radley-Walters filed a standard after-action report noting the destruction of one Tiger tank, type unspecified, crew unknown. The war continued. Historians would spend decades debating who actually killed Michael Wittmann. Multiple Allied units claimed involvement in the engagement. British tanks operating in the same sector reported firing on German armor. The fog of war obscured timelines, confused positions, created contradictions in witness testimony. Radley-Walters himself never claimed to have killed Wittmann specifically. He claimed to have destroyed a Tiger tank on August 8th near Chateau Gaumisnil, which was accurate and verifiable. Whether that Tiger was tank number 007, commanded by Michael Wittmann, was a question for historians, not soldiers. What mattered tactically was that the German counterattack had failed. What mattered strategically was that German armored reserves were being destroyed faster than they could be replaced. What mattered personally to Radley-Walters was that his crew had survived and his tactics had worked, and tomorrow he would climb into another Sherman and try to survive again. The war ground forward through August and into September. The Sherbrooke Fusiliers advanced across France, liberating towns, engaging German rearguard forces, suffering losses. Radley-Walters accumulated confirmed kills. A Panzer IV destroyed from ambush near Falaise. 2 Sturmgeschütz assault guns caught in the open during the pursuit across the Seine. A Panther immobilized by coordinated fire from 3 Shermans, then finished with a Firefly shot to the engine compartment. Each kill represented tactics executed correctly, geometry calculated perfectly, seconds of perfect coordination among crews who trusted each other absolutely. But each engagement also represented risk, and risk accumulates. September 27, 1944. A German shell struck Radley-Walters' tank during an engagement near the German border. The round did not penetrate fully but detonated against the turret armor with enough force to send fragments through the vision slits. Radley-Walters suffered shrapnel wounds to the face and a severe concussion. Medical personnel evacuated him to a field hospital. Doctors recommended 3 weeks of rest minimum. Radley-Walters returned to combat after 5 days. He was not being heroic. He was being practical. The Sherbrooke Fusiliers were under strength. Experienced tank commanders were irreplaceable. Every day he spent in a hospital bed was a day his regiment operated with one fewer leader who understood how to keep crews alive. So he returned with bandages still on his face, with headaches that made it difficult to focus, with ringing in his ears that would never completely fade. He returned because the war was not finished, and his men needed him, and sitting safely in a hospital while they died was not acceptable. October, November, December. Winter closed over Europe. The advance slowed, bogged down by mud and rain and German resistance stiffening as they fell back toward their own borders. Radley-Walters continued to fight, continued to accumulate kills, continued to survive. 16 confirmed tank destructions. 17. 18. The numbers meant nothing to him. He did not keep a personal tally. He did not paint kill marks on his tank. The destruction of enemy armor was a tactical necessity, not a sport, not a competition. What mattered was mission completion and crew survival, in that order always. February 18, 1945. Eastern France. The third tank destruction. A German shell penetrated the engine compartment of Radley-Walters' Sherman, igniting the fuel tanks, turning the rear of the vehicle into an inferno. The crew evacuated through the forward hatches, tumbling out onto frozen ground while the tank burned behind them. Radley-Walters pulled his loader clear, counted heads, confirmed everyone was alive. They had survived again, statistically impossible, mathematically absurd, completely real. He requested another tank. He returned to combat. The war continued. May 7, 1945. Germany surrendered unconditionally. The war in Europe ended. Sydney Radley-Walters had survived 1,000 days of combat operations. He had been wounded multiple times, concussed repeatedly, burned twice. He had lost crew members, friends, brothers in arms. He had killed 18 German armored vehicles in confirmed direct engagements, plus uncountable infantry, anti-tank positions, and support vehicles. He had become the most successful Allied tank commander in the Western theater. And he had done it all from inside a tank that everyone knew was a death trap, using tactics that prioritized survival over glory, leading men who trusted him, because he kept them alive. After the war, Radley-Walters remained in the Canadian Army. He rose to the rank of Major General. He commanded armored units, trained new generations of tank crews, served in staff positions. He never wrote a memoir. He never sought publicity. When historians contacted him decades later to discuss the destruction of Michael Wittmann, he provided factual accounts of the engagement without embellishment or claims of personal glory. Yes, his unit had engaged German armor near Chateau Gaumesnil on August 8, 1944. Yes, a Tiger tank had been destroyed. Yes, it was possible that Tiger had been commanded by Michael Wittmann, though he had not known that at the time and still considered it a matter for historical investigation rather than personal pride. The military honors came anyway. The Distinguished Service Order, mentioned in dispatches 3 times, the French Croix de Guerre, the Order of Canada, recognition from a nation grateful for his service, from a military that understood what he had accomplished. But Radley-Walters never defined himself by medals or kill counts. He defined himself by the men who served under him and survived because of his leadership. He died in April 2015 at the age of 95, having outlived nearly all his wartime contemporaries. His obituaries noted his military achievements, his decorations, his possible involvement in the death of Michael Wittmann. But the obituaries could not capture what made him exceptional. They could not explain how an infantry officer with no tank training became the deadliest Allied tank commander. They could not describe the weight of climbing into a Sherman knowing the odds were against you, the discipline required to enforce rest schedules when every instinct screamed to push harder, the mathematics of survival in a war designed to kill you. Sydney Radley-Walters survived because he understood that heroism and survival were not the same thing. Heroism was charging into enemy fire, accepting death as the price of glory. Survival was studying the geometry of ambush positions, enforcing crew rest schedules, refusing to fight fair. Hollywood worships the heroic. History is written by those who survive. Radley-Walters chose survival and took his men with him. The greatest tank ace on the Western Front was not the man with the most confirmed kills. It was the man who understood that killing the enemy mattered less than bringing his crews home alive. It was the commander who climbed into a burning tank 3 times and walked away 3 times because he had calculated the odds and refused to accept them. It was the leader who destroyed Germany's most legendary Panzer ace and never bothered to learn his name, because the identity of the dead mattered less than the survival of the living. This is the story history nearly forgot, not because it lacked drama or significance, but because the man at its center never sought fame. Sydney Radley-Walters fought his war with quiet competence, tactical brilliance, and absolute dedication to the men under his command. He did not need recognition. He did not want glory. He wanted only to complete the mission and bring his crews home. In an age that worships spectacle and celebrates individual achievement, his story offers something more valuable, a reminder that true leadership is measured not in headlines or kill counts, but in the people who survive because of your decisions. That discipline matters more than aggression. That bringing your men home alive is worth more than any medal. That the greatest heroes are often those who never think of themselves as heroes at all. If you found this story as powerful as we did, please consider subscribing to our channel for more deep dives into the forgotten stories of history. Hit the like button if this changed the way you think about what heroism really means in war. And we want to hear from you. In your opinion, should a tank commander be measured by how many enemy vehicles he destroyed, or by how many of his own men he kept alive? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. This is a conversation worth having, and we read every response. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next story.